Welcome to another edition of EHC, the podcast. I'm your host, Jim Pete. Today, joined by Mr. Social, Mike Hattery. You had a big weekend, Mike. Where were you this weekend? I saw you with a bow tie and the porch, and there was no game. I was confused.
I know. I was at this Burke wedding, this Adam Burke wedding. I did not look good in a white shirt, but thankfully my wife looked much better than I did. So it was a fun social gathering.
I did notice every picture of said wedding with you in it had your wife either in front of you or on either side of you. So well played. The framing was fantastic.
If you look away from me, it definitely is a good frame, certainly.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut that part out, and I'm going to send it to your wife so it sounds like I'm hitting on her.
I'm good with that. I'm sure she'd be pleased.
All right. Our real intentions here aren't to hit on Mike's wife, although feel free. Find her on Twitter. I don't know what her Twitter handle is. I'm sure she's on Twitter all the time. Our real point here, though, is to talk about Jay Bruce and some other factors involving Jay Bruce. The Indians, of course, made a surprisingly, I guess, public, nonchalant trade to get Jay Bruce. And I guess the biggest noise made in the deal was the fact that the Mets are pissed off at the Yankees. I mean, the deal went kind of by the wayside, whereas last year we traded for Coco Crisp. And no offense to Crisp. He actually did very well for us, had some big moments. But to me, it seems like this Jay Bruce should be a bigger deal than the Coco Crisp deal from last year. And that's not to rip on Coco Crisp again, but Jay Bruce is kind of a big deal this year. You know, he's got 29 home runs for the Mets. Was clearly I don't want to say their best power bat, but one of the better power bats in the National League and in really Major League Baseball. I guess Bruce has been tainted over the years as he got traded to the Mets last year, and he literally, I think that first month back, he had like I don't know, just a major slump that first month back. He picked it up again in September, but what's the stink with Jay Bruce, Mike? Why isn't that a bigger deal? Is it because it was a waiver deadline trade?
Maybe. I don't know. People are boring. But I don't get the stink with him. I mean, he's a legit offensive addition. To be honest, you insert him in this lineup, and I know he's a platoon-heavy guy, and that's how he's going to be played, but he's been significantly better than Michael Brantley this season and many other Indians hitters, and he's an actual upgrade. Like, this isn't just we're like putting our thumb in the dike for the Brantley and Chisenhall injury. Like, this guy's an offensive upgrade. So I got nothing else. I mean, this is a really good addition for no cost, and he adds a lot of power. And the bench scenario is going to be really complex in October, but this guy has to play every game against right-handed pitching in October, and that's going to make for some really wonky decisions when you also have Michael Brantley and Lonnie Chisenhall.
Yeah, well, let's figure that into the equation, because I think at the end of the day, the Jay Bruce deal was somewhat for the rest of the year, but I think it plays more into the playoff baseball that we're going to see. You know, he gives us a lefty off the bench if that's how they choose to use them. But here's my conundrum. I talked with Jeff Nomina in his piece a couple days ago. My conundrum, as I was kind of working through that, is how they use him. Is he ultimately going to be used as a platoon guy, as a part-time guy, as a pinch hitter, or are they ultimately going to use him as a full-time guy? Now, granted, he faces off mostly. He's a lefty, so obviously he's going to face right-handed pitching, which automatically means he's going to see a lot of time. But where does he figure? Let's clean the slate. Let's say everybody comes back healthy. We got Chisenhall in rehab right now. It seems like Brantley. Nothing's been said about Brantley being out forever, although that we know how that goes with him. But let's clean the slate and say, come October 4th or 5th, whenever the playoffs start for us, where does that put Bruce? Does he have to earn his way into the starting lineup every day, or will they strictly use him as a platoon, or is he just going to be a pinch hit guy? It seems like an easy answer to me, but I think when you deal with decision-making sometimes, especially with guys that come to the team late, I don't really know how he fits. So, Mike, you're Tito Francona. How does he fit?
Well, I think you made a really good point when you're on Nam's little video extraordinaire experience. You were talking about, he probably just fits mostly as that platoon and pinch hit guy in the playoffs. I think the really tough thing for the Indians is Michael Brantley has been here forever. Michael Brantley is a good baseball player. He's a good professional baseball player. This year, Jay Bruce has been a lot better. Without any doubt, he's been better offensively. He's been better defensively. I mean, it's reality here. So I think it's going to be challenging. I think the lineup sets up and fits a lot better with Jay Bruce in the lineup because Francona doesn't feel like he has to hit Jay Bruce third. He can hit Jay Bruce fifth or sixth, which when you have plus power at 5 against right-handed pitching, that's awesome. So I think, you and I talked about this and, you said it first, but the lineup just looks a lot better in terms of how we lay it out when it's Jay Bruce instead of Michael Brantley. To be honest, I don't think Bruce cuts into Chisenhall's time that much because Chisenhall's a great defender. You put him next to Zimmer. Fuck it. He does. He does. This is a mess. This is a legit mess to me because the best lineup against right-handed pitching has to have Bruce in it. And if you want a good defensive team, because we lost games in October last year running Tyler Naquin and some other people next to each other, Zimmer and Chisenhall look best defensively in right field, and Chisenhall hits right-handed pitching. And so you're in this situation where the best lineup offensively includes Jay Bruce, the best lineup overall includes Jay Bruce and Lonnie Chisenhall, and you have Michael Brantley, who's an all-star this year, potential comeback player of the year candidate, sort of in a weird position.
And we haven't even talked about Austin Jackson because you got to factor him in because as a platoon bat, he's been playing fantastic as well. I guess the conundrum, I guess at the end of the day, Mike, is it at the beginning of the season this year and at the beginning of the season last year, our big concern was depth, I think, and we had a lot of weird depth. But now it seems like if everybody comes back healthy, our problems are the cupboard is full. Now, doesn't this kind of fit what we've always been talking about with Francona? You put the pieces in the cupboard that he can't mess up with. Is that where we're at? Because you just made the case for this. He starts Chisenhall, great. He starts Bruce, great. I guess the biggest issue will be Brantley. And as hard as we could come off on Brantley in this podcast, and we could come pretty hard on him, if he's the worst case scenario as a healthy Brantley, kind of looks pretty good in the playoffs, right?
I don't know. Okay. I hate this. There are certain things that you're like not supposed to touch if you're right about the Cleveland Indians. And it's Terry Francona. That's
why we call ourselves the EHC podcast. We're carrying on that mantra from the website, Mike. We go where nobody else goes. That's why we had the following that we did. Just say
no
it. I mean, what do you think?
No, there's this thing that we do and is really popular where we say, like, healthy, this guy has the highest ceiling. Like, we're like, oh, this guy healthy, he has the highest ceiling. And first of all, I think that's flawed because I don't think he does anymore. Like, we see this with Kipnis. Part of this is the Kipnis argument, and I saw, the most respected writer in the world, Pluto, and I agree that, Kipnis can be an impact player, but I also think we're in this situation with their franchise where we've seen these guys for quite a bit of years, and we've seen when they've been really productive, and it's hard for us to embrace the reality that injuries sap your profile. Consistent injuries just do. They change who you are as a player, and you can adjust, and you can still be a, competent provider, competent producer, but the ceiling kind of decreases at times. And I think we're there. We have multiple elbow surgeries for Brantley. We have a major ankle issue. We had back issues earlier this year. I don't know what a healthy Brantley is anymore. And I definitely don't think Brantley with coming off an ankle sprain is that good of a defender in left field. So, yeah, I agree. I mean, he's a great worst-case scenario. He's a starting, he's a league average outfielder. He's a really good baseball player. I just think that I think you can deploy this team sort of more optimally.
Well,
it's going to be weird.
Well, let's do this. So before, let's kind of look ahead. I want to come back to Jay Bruce real quick and talk about the lineup specific to today. When I say today, I mean this week, this current point in time for the Indians. But I do want to talk. Obviously, probably the biggest question, at least our circle of friends on Twitter, has been looking forward. You've got these three players now kind of coming all to a head. You've got Jay Bruce, net recently signed, having this major year with the Mets and looking really good over the past 2 days with the Indians. You've got Michael Brantley, who has been an injury issue for the past 2 years. The funniest part about his statistical outlook has been people comparing him to, say, Santana, or comparing him to, say, Jay Bruce, saying, well, 2 years ago his statistics were way better than. But I digress. So you've got the option next year with Brantley at $11 million, and then you have Santana currently playing his last season under contract with the Indians. The big question that we've been seeing a lot on social media, Mike, has been, what do the Indians do next year? And again, trying not to factor in what happens in the playoffs and the extra salary or the extra money that the team gets with all of that. And we know they get a lot because they got a lot last year and were able to do a lot with it. Let's just kind of look at the team as it is now and tell me, let's just get this off the board. The likelihood that they pick up the option on Brantley, I think both of us agree, is pretty high, regardless of what happens, unless he doesn't play another game for the rest of the year. That being said, I'm going to try to word this so you don't have to necessarily jump down a hole here. What are the options that the Indians have with all three players? Like, what could they do with all three players, all things being considered? Like, look at each player, Mike, and tell me what your thoughts are on, could they keep two of those guys? Could they keep all three? What's going to happen in your eyes, or what should they do in your eyes? Take it wherever you want to.
I like being the heel. I'm going to be honest.
Holy crap.
You
just used wrestling terms. This is Mike going to see midget wrestling. Very well played, Mike. Very well played. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That was my effort. That's all I got for you. I'm not a wrestling fan.
All I know is when Nino listens to this, you're going to get a huge pop. That's all I'm going to say.
Thank God. So you can't bring all three back. Doesn't make sense. Zimmer's locked in center field. Chisnell has another year. The only reason it makes sense is if maybe you're giving Bruce like a 2-year little something, because, and then you flip Chiz if you need to flip Chiz because he's an expiring contract after next year. One of the interesting things, though, is like Chisenhall's kind of a mini extension candidate in terms of he's been super productive. He's got a little injury risk. Like, he's a cheap little like extension candidate.
I was just going to mention that. Just popped into my head. I could see them throwing out a 3-year cheapish deal for Chisenhall.
Yeah. So we got Santana. I think people are really overstating the Santana market, and I think he's on a little bit of a down year. By the end of the year, it'll be the same as it always is, I think, probably. I mean, he's still going to hit 20 homers. He's still going to get on base 35% of the time. And he's done that for 6 straight years, and he's played 150 games a year for 6 straight years. And when you can pencil that in with a lineup where Jason Kipnis has huge injury risk, and if you keep Brantley, he has huge injury risk or significant, that has a lot of value in just stabilizing you day to day. So that's really nice.
Well, and can we just real quick talk money there? Because as you're saying all this, I'm thinking, we signed Encarnacion to a 360 deal. I mean, Santana's not getting a 3 and 60 deal, but I think a 3-year deal's on the table. What do you think? What do you, just off the top of the head, Mike, what do you think kind of deal he'd be looking at today on August 13th?
It's really tough because I think this is a market that's, I think he could get a little more than Kendrys Morales, but not much. He's got 3 and 30, which is probably what he merited. I mean, he's just not as good of a player as Santana, but it's close. Santana, I love Santana. He's super useful. I outlined why I think they should keep him. He's stable. He does some really cool things for you. He also is not what Edwin Encarnacion was coming off that deal. I know he's 2 or 3 years younger, which is good on the growth curve, but Edwin Encarnacion was coming off 3 straight years of 145 plus WRC plus, which means he's 45% better than league average offensively. Santana's going to be coming off like 2 straight years of 120 plus WRC plus. It's a good season, but that's a 20% difference in how they were compared to league average. That's huge, especially when the first base market's like really full. We're going to have Yonder Alonso, who's a younger version of Santana, hitting the market this year. He's going to get more money than Santana. And we saw during this trade deadline that, first basemen are like not very significant commodities, especially like offensive. JD Martinez is someone who's not going to last in the outfield. He's probably going to end up at first base too. So you have 2 guys who are same age or younger than Santana, and JD Martinez and Yonder Alonso, and you don't have a massive need of the position from any contender or any major market, which means there's really not a large market for him. And we saw this last year. I mean, do I think he's a little better than Trumbo? Yeah. Do I think he's going to get paid like he's a little better than Trumbo? I don't know. And so what's interesting is I think like 3 and 35 is really possible to get it done. And I would rather 3 and 35 than some other deals which bear a lot more risk.
Well, and the reason why I wanted you to throw those numbers out is I just think the realities of the Indians looking at Santana as a guy they could re-sign are a lot more possible than I think a lot of people are thinking. I think that Santana is going to be in play, and I think a lot of it depends on everything else that's out. If you look at the free agent market next year, I mean, we're not talking about a loaded market, and depending on what the Indians do this year playoff-wise, this could be a scenario where the Indians want to kind of keep this team together for the next 3 or 4 years. My point here is, I don't think they're just looking at next year. I think they're looking at their rotation as kind of being the focal point of their window, which to me means you're going to be looking at guys for 3 or 4 more years. That's why they signed Encarnacion to a 3-year deal with a 4th-year option. So I just want to throw that tidbit out there only because as you were talking on Twitter the other day, Mike, and I don't think we were arguing about, I don't even think it was on Twitter. I think it was in Slack talking with the WFNY guys, but I think we weren't really arguing. We were just kind of bantering about. And you had mentioned the idea of them not picking up the option potentially to sign Bruce or potentially to sign a long-term Santana deal. Doesn't 3 and 35 to you sound like something that the front office would want to do as opposed to having a 1-year option on Brantley, who's been hurt? That's my dog. That's my dog. We might have to stop for a second. I'll cut all that out. As opposed to a 1-year option for Brantley, who's been hurt a lot over the past, now 3 seasons. Is it? I mean, it probably is in play more than we think that they could make an offer to Santana and maybe not pick up that option because they'd offset each other.
Yeah. Michael Brantley doesn't make sense in left field anymore. Okay. Here's how you get here if you're me. I'll explain this to you and people can shred me. That's fine. But here's how you get here. To me, Michael Brantley is a massive injury risk in left field. It takes a toll. The guy started. The ball wasn't even close to him. He took 3 steps towards a fly ball. He's about to miss 3+ weeks with an ankle injury. Multiple surgeries. Hasn't played more than 150 games since 2014. That guy does not belong in the outfield anymore. In that case, he's
and he was honestly like wasn't as healthy as he looked. He was looking kind of healthy heading into that injury, which says it all to me. Like he's never healthy ever.
And so once you concede that, you have him going to first base, and when you compare him to Santana offensively for their careers, Santana's just better in the cumulative. Now Brantley's peak was way better. Brantley's 2 peak seasons, they were better than Santana's peak. But Brantley's peak seasons are 4 years ago. They are 3 surgeries ago. I don't think we're seeing that peak again. First of all, he's never stealing 15 bases again, and that was a part of that season. He's not going to hit 50 doubles again. The athleticism and the power isn't there. And so
he's probably not hitting 20 homers again. Let's just say that. I mean,
unless he starts cheating more. But right. Yeah, I agree. And so to me, like if you move him to first base, his bat doesn't really play at first base. Santana's bat does play at first base. And if we're moving him to first base, he just doesn't have the same value offensively. So,
well, and maybe what says it all is he doesn't have the same value defensively, because What do you get it with Brantley at first base defensively? I mean, the unknown there. I just don't see him transitioning to first and all of the sudden being pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, first is easy, but like, I don't know. It's not that easy. And Santana,
it's easy until someone lines a shot down, hits a shot down the line. I mean, listen, Santana's as incredulous as it sounds. I mean, Santana's faster than Brantley. Santana has better athletic ability than Brantley. I mean, this isn't a rip on. Well, it is a rip on Brantley. I mean, it is. I just all of the factors that you take into account, the more you look at it, make Santana a better option, unless you believe Brantley's going to be a good left fielder. And I don't think people who actually pay attention to baseball think that.
So here's one of the things about Brantley. Since Major League Baseball has been rolling out the sprint speed metric, he's on the bottom end of left fielders. He's significantly below average. In fact, Santana's peak sprint speed is faster than Brantley's, and Brantley's playing left. And yeah, he has like a decent first step, but he's not a good defender out there. The arm can only compensate so much. And I get that you can hide a decent defender in Cleveland because of the left field fence. It's tall and it's a little shallow, so that hides it a little bit. He's not a good defender there. And it's a huge injury risk. I love Michael Brantley. I hate that. We reached this point with him where he's a massive injury risk. I'm shocked he's played 88 games this year, and that's a huge deal.
We have to go to our over-under and look at that. I'm confident our over-under with that was way under 88 games.
Way off. And honestly, to expect him to like add another year and play more than 120 games next year seems insane. And if he's not playing 120 games, I can't justify $11 million to him instead of $11 million to Santana or Jay Bruce. It doesn't make sense to me. And what's also cool is like Brantley's in this weird situation where baseball's shifting towards Jay Bruce. He's made these adjustments. Jim's outlined this on the video with Nam a little bit, but he's like slotting in the zone, which he's not altering the actual arc of his bat. He's just making sure he picks pitches that use the arc of his bat to create a better launch angle. And so he's someone who, while he had a couple of down years, it makes sense, this leap, because he's made mechanical changes. He's only 30 years old. He's no older than Brantley with significantly less injury risk. And so to me, he's sort of like going in the right direction. And Brantley is this guy who's hitting a lot of ground balls. His speed's declining with his heavy ground ball profile.
Could they sign Jay Bruce next year? I mean, he, by all indicators, heading into the organization, loves the organization. By all indicators, over the past 3 to 4 seasons, he has dived into the metric side of the game. He's not necessarily, now, again, I don't want people to confuse this. I mean, I'm not saying that Jay Bruce like sits at home with his computer and is turned into the Saber metrics guy, but what he does do is he analyzes data probably more than most players that we know. That seems to kind of groove into this Indians front office. He seems to be a guy that not only the Indians front office would love, but also a guy that Tito Francona would love, which seems to be like winning the Mega Millions and the Powerball all at the same time. Is it possible? And it seems incredulous to me to think this. Is it possible that Jay Bruce ends up with his team next year as opposed to Santana and Brantley?
I don't think as opposed to. Like, I think Brantley's staying. We're having this conversation, and I'm talking in the what I think. You know, if I was in this process, I'm talking about the factors I would weigh. I think it's really important for me to emphasize Brantley's not going anywhere unless he tore up his ankle.
You realize, though, that we're in the midst of talking me out of that thinking. Like, I'm right now, okay. If you're asking me, I'd be like, oh, hell no. They're signing Santana and Bruce.
So, like, the fun thing about Bruce is you said it.
Mike, if you can hear me, you're frozen out. Hang on.
He's
Stop professional. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
Jim.
Yes. Okay. So you completely froze out on my end.
Okay.
And I think I completely froze out on you. So let's pick it up with like the beginning of the Bruce piece. You started saying,
Terry Francona, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Okay. Go.
The thing about Bruce that's really interesting is Terry Francona has talked about this guy the way he talks about few others, in that he has emphasized his professionalism, his preparation, and just being a good guy to have in the locker room. I think you might have mentioned this, but he's basically talked about him like a Jason Giambi, except Bruce is actually productive. I mean, Francona lauded him significantly, really positive words about what he adds professionally. And that's not something we heard about. Like, we heard Coco Crisp was a contributor, but we didn't hear this. I mean, this is an addition that I think is a little different than the other ones. And I think the static coming out of Francona and the Indians front office about pursuing him for a while is actually kind of significant. So
he was a major topic in the offseason. I mean, we were talking about trying to trade for him in the offseason. Major talk last trade deadline about Jay Bruce. This is a guy that the front office has been targeting. It seems to me like the more that we kind of get into this Jay Bruce experiment, and this isn't just Mike and I talking about the past 2 games here. I mean, great. He had a multi games in his first 2 with the Indians. This is more the overlooking player. You've got a guy that Francona plugged into the 4 spot, which is like his golden spot of wonder, literally plugged him right in. You're 4. Boom. Which is great for me because it gets J-Ram to the 3 spot, which is where I've wanted him all season, but that's beside the point. I mean, this is a guy who, without Brantley, without Kipnis, automatically extends the lineup. The funny thing is with Kipnis and Brantley in the lineup, it still felt like we needed to make that lineup longer. Bruce comes into play. All of a sudden, you got J-Ram at 3. You got Lindor hitting a little bit at 2. You've got interesting. Actually, I take that back. They've got Lindor leading off a little bit. You've got Zimmer up there hitting in the 2 spot now at points. You've got all of these crazy things that are happening, and you've got Encarnacion and Santana hitting 5 and 6, which to me is insane. If Gomes can hit a little bit, all of a sudden, this lineup without Brantley and Kipnis looks long again. So doesn't that factor into the future? I can't fathom that Francona can't see that looking ahead. Is it a lock that Brantley comes back next year? I'm talking myself out of it. It means I'm going to write a piece. I'm going to spend hours on it, Mike, and I'm going to look like an idiot.
I think it's a lock. No, I don't know. I think it's like an 85% lock. Look, this is a guy who the Indians weren't particularly optimistic about in December of last year. And one of the things took him a lot longer to feel like he was in game shape than he expected. I think this free agent class is really interesting too, and how it affects the Indians. I think they can get Santana back for pretty cheap, and they're really comfortable with him. Like this is the Eric Hosmer, Mike Moustakas, Yonder Alonso, Matt Holliday's back on the free agent market. I mean, you have a lot of pieces here. So you can get, I think, Santana pretty cheaply. You may not even need to go 3. I think that's the really interesting thing. I think you might be able to like 2 and 30 Santana, 2 and 28, and that'd be a really fair deal for the Indians. I think that'd be a real bargain. So I'm talking myself more into the possibility of Santana remaining. I also think that the Indians don't like rentals, and they talked about this at the trade deadline. They don't often do a lot of these moves for rentals, and they did it for a rental reliever, but they like position players and pitchers that they can control. And while maybe Indians don't want to pick up a $15 million option on Bruce, maybe they think getting him in the building so that they can negotiate with him to maybe add like 2 years on is advantageous. And maybe they see major risk with Brantley, and maybe they see major risk with Santana, and they want to move Brantley to first and play Bruce in left. But I think this is more than just 2 months of Jay Bruce we're dealing for. I think there's something a little deeper than that. And I think there's a really strong possibility they pursue retaining him. I think they really like the adjustments he's made to improve his profile. And I think that bat plays really well in Progressive Field. That dude has massive pull power in a park that plays beautifully for left-handed hitters. It just does. And so I don't think this is some small thing. I think it's more than the 3 months that people think.
Well, and I mean, we saw Kipnis working on that over the past 3 seasons, and a healthy Kipnis effectively became a pull hitter. And while I wouldn't necessarily call Bruce a pull hitter, he more or less is, especially, he just hits the ball to his strengths. Anyways, I digress. I think looking at it the way you just said it, Mike, is Bruce perhaps a preemptive strike to what the Indians do in the offseason. Do they bring him aboard now as not as a way to sign him in the offseason, but the byproduct of that being them signing Jay Bruce as their big free agent acquisition in the offseason? I see that as being really smart at the end of the road. It's going to just be funny to me when they just hold on to Brantley and let these two guys go. But
yeah, at least
we had the conversation and we can point back to this podcast as us being complete idiots. I do want you to talk
and protect my sanity. I think it's fine if they end up with any of these guys. I think Brantley is a decent $11 million gamble. I just think that there's better ways to do this and there's worse ways. But I think the Indians are in this situation where they have a lot of organizational talent now, and their bad options, their bad outcomes are pretty good, and that's where you want to be. So, that's where we are. And the dog agrees with me. I'm not going to lie.
Ava's agreeing. Ava. All right, hold on. My wife's home. Hey, babe. Babe, I'm at the end of a podcast. Can you not walk in the kitchen? And can you take this dog away? Go into the bedroom for a minute. I love you. Huh? Well, she's barking. Family. All right. They didn't take the dog, and she's going to keep barking. That's okay. All right. I do want to talk about Bruce in the lineup real quick. They plug him in as the 4 guy. I'm assuming against lefties they're going to be probably alternating with Encarnacion. At least that's my assumption here. Where do you see Bruce in the lineup? You talked about him hitting 3 a little bit, but I don't know that they're going to do that. Do you see him just being a 4-5 guy for now until Kipnis, Chisenhall, and Brantley come back?
Yeah, I think he's a 4-5 and then eventually 5-6 guy. I think that's where he's going to sit. This may also be something else. One of the things that's interesting is, I don't know. Encarnacion's been good against righties, but giving him a little more rest against righties wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. So I think you might see him swapped out with Encarnacion a little more frequently to keep Encarnacion fresh for the playoffs and everything. That would make sense to me.
One other thing here, as we kind of look forward, you've got Chisenhall coming off the DL soon, Brantley assuming coming off the DL at some point in September. Obviously by then we're able to extend the active roster. What happens in the playoffs when you have all these guys out there? Because obviously I think Austin Jackson's a lock to stick with the team. Almonte's going to be the first to kind of – I think when Chisenhall comes up, Almonte's the first to go down because he's got options left. What happens come playoff time, though, when you've got, Bruce, Brantley, Zimmer, Austin Jackson, Brandon Geyer, Lonnie Chisenhall? Someone's got to go there. Is it Geyer? Doesn't make sense to me. It can't be Zimmer.
Does somebody have to go there?
Does
somebody have to go there, Jim?
I think if you look at if you look at the infield, I think the way you and I look at the infield, and you look at J-Ram the way they have to kind of play him right now, maybe not. Maybe you can do it with one less infielder, right? But, gosh, that's a lot of outfielders, don't you think?
Yeah, but Francisco Lindor is not missing a single playoff game, and if he is, it's over anyway. You're moving Ursula over there, or you're moving Jose Ramirez over there. Let's not act like Eric Gonzalez is a good contingency plan for anything other than replacing himself. So why not? Why do we need a crap hitting utility infielder when if any of those guys are off the infield? Jose can play anywhere. Gio can play pretty much anywhere except second. He has experience at short in the last couple of years.
And you're missing my segue. You're missing why I'm segueing this.
Yanni friggin' Diaz.
No. They're playing Lonnie Chisenhall at third base here and there during his rehab assignment. And so is this? This is clearly their plan, right? You nailed it. You didn't even know where I was going with this, but clearly their plan is to have Lonnie as an option for the infield, right? And just deal with all these outfielders. That's their plan. See, this was the message to me when I heard that Lonnie was going to be playing some third base at AAA.
Jay Bruce is starting every outfield game.
What's that?
In the playoffs. Yeah.
Well,
Jay Bruce is starting in the outfield all the time.
My thought was they clearly think Brantley's coming back too. They think they're going to have a logjam in the outfield. So obviously they're trying to figure out ways to get some of these guys from the outfield into the infield, which is just odd to me. But Lonnie Chisenhall at third base.
Could be fun. I miss it.
All right. I didn't think this was going to be our only topic today, but it turned out to be our only topic. We're actually going to try to pump another one out here at the end of this baseball game that's happening today, talking specifically about Kluber and the rotation a little bit. But with that being said, Mike, anything coming out this week that you know of that you're planning on writing?
No.
I'll have something tomorrow. I have a Jay Bruce piece that's so far out of date that I'm probably going to publish, but yeah.
I mean, I got nothing.
All right, so tune into WFNY where, thank God, Bode's going to have something. Bodie. I'm sorry. I keep calling him fuck it. That's what his name's going to be. Bode. Bode will have plenty. He'll be talking about how great Clevenger is. Go Clevenger and Lonnie.
Clevenger on 20 days rest is pretty decent, I suppose.
Oh, man. And I'm sure Nominal will have some more videos. The way our videos draw, he's probably just going to talk to himself, don't you think?
I think so.
Oh, man. If you're listening to this, if you made it this far, go and click the Nomina links that Mike and I are part of. Forget all those other ones. Just click the ones we're a part of. He won't listen this far, so Nomina won't be listening to this by then. So, all right, we're going to wrap things up. We'll be seeing you soon, talking a little bit about Kluber and the rest of the rotation, which is starting to look really good. Yeah. All right. Later.
Peace.